Well, you know what? Fuck Korthia, man. So, the chat we are having today on this excessively hot summer Sunday afternoon is the endgame zone. It's a very stable concept in WoW, which is the fact that once you hit max level, you're gonna get funneled into some place to go every day. We have had it for multiple expansions now, and actually for more expansions than not throughout all of WoW, we have gotten endgame zones. So, growing a little bit tired and frustrated at the way Korthia functions, I wanted to take a look to see where does Korthia stand compared to all the other endgame zones, because we have about 11 throughout the history of WoW of these types of zones, to see how exactly is Korthia comparing, because my main complaint when it comes to Korthia is that there isn't a proper route for you to get what you want to get. In this case, it's reputation. Yeah, it's made in the shape of research, which you then turn in and you gain reputation at half the rate, whatever. It's still the same thing. Many other zones, in fact, most of the other zones were working differently. So I guess we can appreciate and congratulate Blizzard in trying something new, in trying something diverse and unique, and not like before. Okay, that's something we can say. Even if we dislike how it turned out, we can at least praise the effort of trying something different. So, in the words of Dumbledore, well done, Blizzard, well done. However, how fucking ever, with this experimental attempt of Korthia, I have my complaints to raise on the matter, on the subject, because as you might have noticed in Korthia, it's not that every day you get your daily quests, you turn them in, it's your, scripted 600 rep per day or 800 rep per day, and then you're done, right? That's simple. That's how it worked before in the other zones. Most of the other zones work like that. In Korthia, that's the difference. In Korthia, you might pick up all of your daily quests based on your rep or your research level. It's going to be like 4 daily quests. You pick them all up, you do them, you turn them all in, and you gain 0 reputation with the Archivist Codex. Because the Archivist Codex only rep is through research. So if none of the quests are going to award you as a quest reward research, you're actually getting 0 rep. That's the first time going through an endgame zone where, technically speaking, you could be doing all of the dailies offered to you in the zone and not really gain anything, not really have any progress towards your reputation grind. The reputation as a whole has been scattered around the zone. That's likely why Blizzard split the faction into 2. One is the Death's Advance and one is the Archivist Codex. The Death's Advance is the very old school rep. Death's Advance is rep for dailies. You take the dailies, you turn them in, you gain rep with the Death's Advance, and then at a fixed date, after a fixed amount of quests, you're gonna be getting to Exalted. You can do some extra events in Korthia to give you more rep, but generally speaking, as long as you do the daily quests, the rep from the Death's Advance is gonna come. There is an issue though. Nobody gives a shit about the Death's Advance rep. Everybody wants the Archivist Codex, which is the one that gives you the socket item, the one that gives you the conduit upgrade item. And that is the rep that is going rogue. It's hiding all around Korthia, and you have to do alternative activities, extra activities to gain that rep. Namely speaking, it's essentially, picking up everything that glows on the minimap. Relic gorgers, mushrooms, nests, caches, bones or stones or relics or rift-bound caches, the special purple mobs, the anima vessels in the maw, the Hellsworn special chest, the spectral bound chests, as well as all the daily available rares. That's where you're gonna get your reputation. And this is not something fixed, because the spawn locations of pretty much almost all of this is not going to be fixed. It's going to be random or randomized within a certain set of possible spawn locations. Certain rares are not even going to be active for the day, so they're not even going to be there. Unless you want to stay in for several hours, you will also have to start min-maxing the looking for group tool, unlike the maw, if you remember, where you couldn't be in the maw and then join someone's group and immediately be phased in the maw. You had to go all the way back to Oribos if you wanted to join that group. Korthia doesn't work like that, so you can just run around looking in the looking for group tool for a group for the specific rare, so you can immediately phase into the realm and tag the rare and get it, as well as several other min-maxing that you have to do for this zone. That's when I got the idea to think about how it used to be in the past. The first time we had this addition in the game of an endgame zone where you get to go and do things specifically at max level, current content, was the Isle of Caldanas in TBC. So at the end of TBC, once Blizzard released the Magister's Terrace dungeon and the Sunweb Plateau, they built an entire zone, a playable zone around it. It was very bare bones. There were just a handful of story quests in there. The majority, it was dailies. Ever since the first edition of the daily quests in the Isle of Caldanas, which was one of the first times Blizzard were getting into this heavy addition of daily quests after the Ogrilla dailies and the Shatar Skyguard dailies. This one was the main one. They had the whole thing about the more rep you have, the higher you have in rep, the more daily quests are going to be available. That was the only unique thing. For the most part, it was a very simple zone. You had two main hubs, the one in front of Sunweb Plateau and the one to the side, and that was it. There wasn't much else in the zone. The rewards were also pretty lacking. There was just one vendor with a few, I guess nowadays they are transmog pieces, and very few other things. We basically completely skipped Wrath of the Lich King. Wrath of the Lich King, you could say the, so to speak, end game zones were the Storm Peaks and Ice Crown, but they didn't really have anything specific or anything extra. You had, in between Ulduar and then the release of the Grand Tournament, you had the addition of the Argent Tournament, so the daily quests up north in Ice Crown for the Argent Tournament. That was the only minor thing, but it can't be considered an endgame zone. The next endgame zone happened midway through Cataclysm because it was the Molten Front. So the whole story-driven addition of the Molten Front, which made you assault Ragnaros' lair. So you started with the invasion, you set up your sanctuary of Malorn, and then you had to get into the Molten Front. They tried something unique as well in there. They based the entire growth of your daily quest stages, going from 1 to 5, through the Marks of the World tree, so not even rep. At that point, it was basically do quests, do daily quests, get Marks of the World 3. When you have tot amount, when you have X amount of Marks of the World 3, you can basically jump to the next stage of the progression. But that was also not what Blizzard would end up with thinking about when it came to an endgame zone, because much like the Isle of Caldanas, this entire thing, the Molten Front, had very few rewards. I think it only had a couple of toys and a couple of pets. You got your Flame Ward Hippogriff guaranteed for reaching Exalted. You got Liara's Locket, your transmog toy item, and that was kind of it. Not really much else. The first real idea of what would we get eventually as an endgame zone was the Isle of Thunder, the 5.2 patch in Mist of Pandaria. It did work similar to the Molten Front with different stages, right? You were landing there with your ships as your faction, then you were starting to build up your bases, you were starting to get inside the city, getting past the walls in stage 3, and then you start getting deeper and deeper, and this was done through daily quests. A ton of stuff was added in the zone. You had zone-wide drops, including the keys to the Palace of Lei Shen, which was the single-player scenario for the Trove of Lei Shen to get some treasures, to get some rewards. You had more pets, more toys, and more mounts added to Throne of Thunder. It was still, though, a pretty heavy, story-driven zone, because that was where the raid was, that was where Throne of Thunder was. So you were building, as you were going through the stages, you were building into getting into Throne of Thunder. The real special one was the Timeless Isle, because this was during the full stretch of the advertisement of the shilling that Blizzard was doing for Warlords of Draenor. They were building this campaign of going back to our roots, putting war back into Warcraft. It's where it belongs. Orcs versus humans. This was the whole thing around Worlds of Draenor. When they introduced the Timeless Isle, they pushed this as this new thing going back to the days of vanilla. No quests, no daily quests, no story, no nothing. You just go in there and you endlessly kill mobs. That was the whole idea behind the Timeless Isle, which is effectively, that's what it was. There were very, very few daily quests. In fact, most of them were weeklies, and they weren't even that difficult. You were just getting them for free as you endlessly killed mobs. Most of the stuff was just killing rares and doing special events. As you can see from going to need a bigger bag, lots of vanity items from Timeless Isle, lots of toys and transmog toys to change your appearance. You know, there is plenty of them in there. You had multiple mounts and almost 20 different pets you could get from the entire zone, as well as the addition of the world PvP with bloody coins, being able to turn into a hostile player to both factions and then killing them for bloody coins, which would give you eventually the title Firewatcher, special mount, and a bunch of other stuff. Lots of people liked that. Lots of people liked not being tied to daily quests, not being tied to weekly quests, not having to look at a rep bar and seeing how much they are growing that bar every day. They simply go in there and kill a bunch of mobs. Maybe they get a toy, maybe they get a pet, maybe they get a mount, right? And then they go again. Without a precise goal, a precise end goal. Just go in there and do whatever. That was the idea. Can't say much, to be fair, about the next one we get after Mist, which was Warlords with Tanan Jungle. You know, it took a long time to get Tanan Jungle out, and when it was out, it lasted for almost a year. So I think Tanan Jungle was actually pretty nice. It's just that because it was so long and the expansion in terms of content as a whole was so disappointing that people just look at Tanan Jungle with some gag reflex coming up out of nowhere, you know, even though it wasn't that bad. It had plenty of toys, plenty of pets. The reputation was very deterministic, so you had your dailies, do your dailies, get your rep. There was nothing extra, nothing special you had to do. The only special things were for toys and pets, right? You had 12 different toys, you had 7 different mounts in the entire zone, 12 different battle pets, 2 titles, and a bunch of different vanity items for, you know, transforming yourself. The Throbbing Blood Orb to become the big-ass orc, the Cursed Feather of Ixan to turn into an Arakoa, the Ghostly Iron Buccaneer's Hat to turn into a Skeleton Pirate, etc, etc. The zone itself did actually give you quite a lot of stuff, quite diverse in terms of rewards. It's just that, you know, the context in which Tanan Jungle was released kind of soured the perception of the zone for many people. Then you had the 2 Legion zones of Broken Shore and the Antoran Wastes in Argus. They functioned very, very similarly. You had a campaign quest, as usual. The deeper you go into the campaign, the more quests you have to do every day in terms of dailies. And then you had the whole rewards. They had this addition of these base of operation and buildings that give you buffs, you know, different options that you can choose every day. Of course, in the Broken Shore, you had the Renown Mage Tower, right? You had to choose between the Mage Tower, the Command Center, and the Nether Disruptor. The Mage Tower became a pretty big thing because of the rewards you could get in there with your artifact appearances. Argus, because of that, because of the lacking of the Mage Tower challenge, Argus was considered a little bit worse. It still had a similar thing with the different phases of the story quests and some additions in terms of new stuff like the Netherlight Crucible, but, you know, if you had to decide between the Mage Tower and the Netherlight Crucible, most people would go for the Mage Tower, right? Then we have the modern times, up until just a few months ago, which were Mechagon and Nazjatar. Particularly unique because they were released at the same time. Interesting decision from Blizzard to do it, you know, all at once. Very similarly, these zones had their daily quests every day. They had a handful of storyline related quests. Nazjatar had way more than Mechagon. Mechagon just had the storyline related to enter Mechagon. It was mostly locked by reputation and it was only a handful of quests, whereas Nazjatar, you know, because the raid was there, because the story with Sylvanas and Jaina and Nathanos was all in Nazjatar, it was of course more story driven. The rest was dailies and world quests, just like in Legion. You do your dailies and then you can clear the world quests and that's it. You have still the treasures, the rares for toys, pets and mounts in both Mechagon and Nazjatar, and those seemed fine. I don't know about you, but I didn't see that many complaints about Mechagon and Nazjatar except from the usual ones trying to get some pity upvotes, some pity likes by saying wow, bad. As a whole, the zones were pretty nice to be into. You could get in there, spend 20 minutes at best, be done and get out without feeling like you're missing anything. If you didn't care, for example, about camping a certain rare, giving you a mount, for example, if you didn't give a shit about that, you were in and out in 20 minutes and you were done. Now, the Maw in Shadowlands did the same thing, technically speaking. You had no world quests, but you had daily quests and then started doing what we see in full force in Korthia, which is, yes, you are getting rep and you are getting Stygia. if you do daily quests. So you're still getting that. However, we, and by we I mean Blizzard, we are gonna put a lot of the gains you can have away from daily quests, from extra activities. In the case of the MO, it was Stygia and Reputation. So we give you a limiter, we give you a timer, which is the Eye of the Jailer attention. If you do your 3 daily quests, you get like 2 out of 5 Eye of the Jailer attention, which means all of the rest needs to be filled by going in circles hunting for rares. You kill rares for rep and for Stygia until you get to 5 attention and then you get out. So that was the first part in Shadowlands, where you had a bunch of dailies that gave you a decent amount of rep and a decent amount of Stygia, but if you wanted to get the other half, the other 50% of your daily intake of rep and Stygia, you had to go the extra mile, the extra rare hunting mile. When we got to Korthia, this was extremized even more, because now, as I mentioned at the start, if you are unlucky and you get 0 cataloged research rewards from your daily reward, from your daily quest reward, you are basically getting 0. You're getting 0 progression towards the reputation, and all of the rest of the progression is going to be put into the extra activity, the hunting of rares and special spawns and chests and relics all across Korthia. Personally, I will repeat again, I don't like it. I would much rather have a fixed system up to the majority of it. So 50, maybe 60% likely for my taste, 70% of everything I can get, I want it to be deterministic. I want it to be fixed. For example, you can get some 1200 rep per day in Korthia if you min-max consistently. I want 700 of that to always come from daily quests. I want to be guaranteed that if I do my 4 daily quests, I get 60 to 70% of the possible thing I'm aiming at. In this case, it's reputation. I want it to be guaranteed. Then, if I want the remaining 30 or the remaining 40%, fine. I will go hunting for rares. I will go do my rift and get my 4 caches. I will go and look for all of the mushrooms and the stones and the caches and the chests, but only after I have gotten my main chunk of rep. I don't want it to be the only way to get it, because it's not guaranteed. You don't know if you're going to get it. It might get frustrating and annoying, and at the end of the day, this is just a daily activity. It's just a ruse, to keep you in the game, to keep you spending time in the game, even though you're not doing your main activity, arenas, raiding, Mythic Plus, whichever it may be. If it has to be a chore, I want it to be a chore. If my chore is to clean my room, I know it's gonna take 10 minutes. If my chore is to empty the dishwasher and then clean the kitchen, I know it's gonna take 10 minutes. This chore, I don't know how much time it's gonna fucking take, because I don't know which rares are spawning. I don't know where all of the bones or stones or mushroom spawns are going to be. I don't know how many relics are going to drop from the rares and how many relics I'm going to loot from all of that stuff. So I just don't know. I don't think that's good. This was good in something like the Timeless Isle. Why? Well, because the Timeless Isle didn't have an important rep you wanted to grind. 90% of the important stuff in the Timeless Isle was in toys and pets and mounts, which were from the random rares. So it was all random. You didn't know if you're going to get it or not, because it was all in the rares. You weren't logging in the game and going to the Timeless Isle with the idea that I should be done in 20 minutes, right? There was no getting done in 20 minutes in a Timeless Isle, so you knew this beforehand. This was known. If in Korthia there was no rep, there were no sockets and no conduit items, and it was just there for pets and toys and mounts, right? Increase the number of rewards like that. So double the amount of mounts, triple the amount of toys, and quadruple the amount of pets without anything tied to reputation, then it's perfectly fine. You can go in there and spend 2 hours a day trying to pick everything up to loot all of those vanity items. And I, a connoisseur, a gentleman who doesn't give a shit about vanity items, I could have just left Korthia. Unfortunately, reputation in this case is going to award you power in the shape of a socket item and in the shape of a conduit upgrade item. That's where I think the mistake is. I don't think Korthia as a zone is bad. I don't think the way it works is bad. All of this special stuff spawning is kind of good every day. It gives you some variety to what you want to do. Which rare is up where is this going to spawn, where is that going to spawn. I think it's okay. You even have the rift, you know, the special rift addition to go into a different dimension is kind of cool. They could have added some more interesting things, some more interesting mobs in there, rather than just, what, 2 rares, 3 rares, and that's it. So I think they could have done something better with the rift. It was a good idea, but besides that, it's an okay zone with good amount of rewards and things to do. It's just that the amount of reward, it's just that the amount that you're getting rewarded in terms of reputation is too tied to extra activities that you cannot determine, you cannot fix with a specific amount of time you're gonna spend to do it, to do those. And I think it feels a little bit bad. It feels a little bit bad, as I mentioned. It's a chore, and I want to treat it like a chore. I want to know how much time it's going to take me before I can leave and not just have a question mark every time I enter Korthia and not know how much am I going to be swamped in there before I get it done. Let me guys know what you think about Korthia so far. In my personal opinion, my favorite zone of all the endgame zones we have seen was the Isle of Thunder. The Isle of Thunder in Mist of Pandaria, followed probably, I know people might not like it, to be fair, but I think Nazjatar was also pretty good. So with this, we can stop this Sunday's video related to getting triggered about Korthia. Thank you guys for watching the video, and if you want to support the addition of Archivist Codex Reputation reward from completing daily quests, like any other normal endgame zone would, then think about subscribing, liking, disliking, following, unfollowing, and whatever else. I'm not sure. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, I have to go in Korthia again. Who knows for how long?